Hey there. Welcome back in to the Eye on College Basketball podcast. I am Matt Norlander, back from the Peach Jam. Was great to get down there. Was also at Adidas, see a number of prospects, and really well-run event this year on both ends for Adidas and for Nike. They were about 2 hours apart with Adidas in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and then, as always, the Nike Peach Jam going down in North Augusta, South Carolina. Saw a litany of coaches and a lot of players, and always good to get down there and catch up with a bunch of people. We will get to a lot. Listen, this is going to be a lot of recruiting heavy specific kind of stuff. Want to give our listeners here, a real good primer on the players to know and where they are at with some of their recruitments and what they just showed in the first week of July. So listen, Gary Parrish, vacation this week. Yeah, no show with Parrish today. Sorry to say it. But here's the real. Adam Finkelstein, the director of scouting for 247 Sports, he's going to come in just a couple of minutes, and I'm going to ask him questions, and he's going to make all of us smarter. The plan a few days ago was just to do an episode based off of that. But that's not how we have to start this show. All right. We got to get into Bob Huggins here because, the Huggins stuff has developed into bizarro world, is quickly moving into the most annoying story of the entire offseason. So if you've been following with the news cycle, be it checking in on your CBS Sports app at cbssports.com, if you're on social media, like you're probably generally aware. I think most people tuning into the podcast are at least somewhat updated on the Huggins situation, but I do know that we have a healthy portion of our audience that doesn't use social media, and maybe you're enjoying the middle of your July, and if so, you know what, more power to you. I appreciate you. That's you're living life right. However, if you are unaware, Bob Huggins believes that he should be reinstated as the coach at West Virginia. You can hit the tap back 15-second mark on your podcast. Hear me say that again. I did not stutter. I did not state that incorrectly. So I got a whole bunch of stuff to read here, then a quick take off of it. Let me catch you all up. All right. So last Friday, there's a man, a lawyer. His name is David Campbell. He is representing Bob Huggins. Now, he is recently began representing Bob Huggins. Bob Huggins has other attorneys, but they are not material to whatever the hell is happening right now. So David Campbell sends a letter to the president of West Virginia, E. Gordon Gee. And in this letter, he basically states, Bob Huggins never technically resigned. You guys put up a statement from him on social media that, quoted him and said he was resigning, but he never actually technically resigned. So pursuant to his employment agreement, Bob Huggins is still actually employed by West Virginia and seeks to return as the coach of the men's basketball program. The letter from Huggins' lawyer, David Campbell, at first says that Huggins does not seek any kind of litigation, doesn't want that. But at the end of it, it says, listen, if we don't resolve this, we'll be happy to sue and see you in court. So that gets sent on Friday. Then West Virginia's general counsel, led by an attorney named Stephanie Taylor, sent a reply letter. Now, all of this came to light Saturday night. I was flying. I landed in White Plains at, I don't even know, 10 o'clock at night. I land to these text messages and Slack messages about, have you seen this Huggins story? Because by that point, credit to Metro News and Hoppy Kercheval, who were the ones to bring this to light, the trading of these two letters, okay? And I'm going to quote from the first letter from Saturday from Stephanie Taylor, responding to Campbell's letter. And it's written, aside from being completely factually inaccurate, which we addressed briefly below, the allegations within this letter are at odds with my conversations yesterday with Mr. Bob Fitzsimmons, a West Virginia lawyer who has recently represented Mr. Huggins in various matters, and with the university's prior conversations and documented correspondence with Mr. James Rocky Gianola, Mr. Huggins' longstanding lawyer, who has historically represented him, during the May 2023 negotiations with the university. My quote here, she's obviously referring to the radio incident with Huggins in which he almost lost his job, back to the statement, and who represented him in conversations with the university on June 16th and 17th, 2023, when Mr. Huggins decided to resign as WVU head men's basketball coach and retire from the university effective immediately. Okay, so that's its own news cycle unto itself. Then Campbell responds in a letter on Sunday, and then the university responded back to him on Monday. Both of those came to light on Monday. Oh, and by the way, Huggins put out a statement. Now, I'm going to read this whole damn thing. All right. It's a lot of setup here. I apologize, but I still can't even believe we're at this point. But nevertheless, through Campbell, his newfound attorney, Huggins released the following statement. The press has now seen the letter sent by my counsel setting forth my position that I never resigned from my employment as head basketball coach for West Virginia University. My attorney will address the legal issues relating to my purported resignation. I wanted to respond to WVU's statements and set the record straight on the past 2 weeks. Initially, let me say that I am truly sorry for the mistake that I made in Pittsburgh. I've taken responsibility for the mistake and have taken course to verify that such a mistake will not occur in the future. I voluntarily checked into a world-class rehabilitation center, and I intend to remain in the center until I am cleared to return my active coaching duties. The letter continues. This is Huggins again. Due to my focus on the rehabilitation, I have not been in the media or responding to WVU's statements regarding the incident. I now understand that WVU published a statement purportedly written by me at 10:30 p.m. on June 17th, 2023. The WVU statement provides, today I've submitted a letter to President Gordon Gee and Vice President and Director of Athletics Ren Baker, informing them of my resignation and intention to retire as head men's basketball coach at West Virginia, effective immediately. End quote. Huggins continues, I did not draft or review WVU statements. This false statement was sent under my name, but no signature is included. In addition, the false unsigned statement was accompanied by a joint statement from the president and athletics director that clearly implied that they had received this purported resignation letter from me. Coach Huggins informed us of his intent to retire and has submitted his letter of resignation, and we've accepted it in light of recent events. We support his decision so that he can focus on his health and family, end quote. Two more graphs from Huggins here. I'm employed by WVU pursuant to an employment agreement, and I never submitted the notice required on the employment agreement to voluntarily resign. I let WVU know that I was seeking rehabilitation. However, WVU was not willing to speak with me about the Pittsburgh event, nor to provide me time to obtain counsel to review my employment agreement. I met with my players on June 17th and let them know the truth, that I did not know what would happen to me, but that if I was not their coach, I was hoping that I would be replaced by a coach that I recommended to WVU. Most importantly, whether I was staying or not, I was encouraging the players to stay at WVU. My players come first, and they needed to hear my support for WVU directly from me. Last graph from Huggins. Now that I have obtained counsel to review the employment agreement and have seen WVU's comments about my current status, it is clear that WVU did not handle the situation appropriately. More importantly, the basketball program is in need, and I have a strong desire to conclude my career as the head basketball coach for the program that I love. I hope to meet with WVU in the near future to resolve the situation. So that's the letter Huggins writes on Monday. It goes public. Now, I'm not gonna go nuts with the next set of letters here, but Campbell again responds, and there's a little bit of snark in that letter, accusing Stephanie Taylor, the lead counsel for West Virginia, that her first letter was written with the intention of forwarding it to the media and had statements, made for Twitter, whatever. Then Taylor just completely eviscerates Campbell in the follow-up. I mean, I'm no lawyer, but this thing reads like few other legal letters I have ever seen in my life. You can find the story in the description of this podcast. We'll link to the news or not, if we could do that, if you could be so kind. And you can see a full PDF of all of that. But, the main takeaways in this are that Taylor writes, hey, and I'm going to paraphrase and use my own interpretation here. Hey, listen, Huggins has two other attorneys. We were dealing with them when he resigned. Who are you? Are you his primary attorney? Should we be consulting with his other attorneys about this matter? Are you only working with him specifically as it pertains to the resignation and the technicality of it? Okay. Not only that, but Rocky Gianola, who is one of Huggins, as I understand it, one of Huggins' closest friends, he was the guy that on the Friday that Huggins got arrested for, again, remember the issue here. Huggins had a shredded tire, did not know he was in Pittsburgh, and blew a .210. Okay. So he resigned. And oh, by the way, if he had not resigned, quite obviously, the president and the people at West Virginia went to him, I'm told, and said, listen, you got two options here. You either resign or we will fire you. Like, it is one or two. So he resigned in that moment, doing so through Rocky Gianola, who was communicating with West Virginia's general counsel and Gordon Gee, et cetera, et cetera. So they were the ones communicating this resignation. What's more, Huggins told the team in person he was resigning. That is West Virginia's understanding. Okay. Then Huggins, this is per the letter from Stephanie Taylor, got on the phone with an associate athletic director of West Virginia and told him he was resigning. And at no point in the prior 3 weeks with this had Huggins ever expressed, now I understand he's been in a rehab facility, and oh, by the way, good on him. Like, hope he's taking it seriously, and hopefully he can, course correct in a significant way here. But if he's been, largely radio silent, I get that. But this is like, he didn't object to it 2 days later. We didn't hear from Huggins or anyone else 6 days after his resignation. This took 3 weeks. And then the kicker for me is that in this letter from Taylor, she lays out that on the Sunday, that's 3 weeks back, after he gets fired, he resigns on a Saturday. He goes to his office. He is cleaning out his office. He sees Ren Baker, the athletic director, in the office. They discuss, sadness and whatever they discuss in the office about him no longer being the coach of West Virginia. Huggins is cleaning out his office. Okay. Then a few weeks pass. I don't know if this is about money. Huggins has made what? North of $40 million at West Virginia alone. And what I have been told, and just kind of asking around, is that if you think, because what I thought this might be is Huggins had a very core group of boosters and buddies and, people around that town, that university that are, they live and die with West Virginia sports, right? And maybe a few of them were kind of rallying him up like, hey, maybe this isn't really over. I'm told that's not what this is. I am told that Bob Huggins has lost most, if not all, support from the people around the university that had been with him for a long, long time. This is more Huggins and some, but not all, people in his family that are trying to get him to do this. What the objective is, I don't know. If you go back and look at actually how he wound up losing his job at Cincinnati, there's a lot of weird similarities here. And I'm not just talking about a DUI instigating an ultimate termination of employment there. But the fact that you have two lawyers who were involved with Huggins as it pertained to all the resignation stuff, and then you've got this new lawyer that is just kind of swooping out of nowhere. And in doing so, even if it's, it's obviously at Huggins' direction, or it would certainly appear to be, just mutilating his reputation at that university, like damaging his legacy forever. Like, he has gone from, man, what an embarrassing way to have probably your coaching career, but certainly your time at West Virginia end. But maybe, you know what? Maybe we let time pass, a couple years go by, and maybe there's something that can be done to recognize Huggins, right? You've gone from that to, I don't even know, because quite clearly, when Huggins kept his job after the radio thing and sat down with the president, and under those terms, obviously had to be a zero tolerance. Like, you're going to keep your job. We're going to redo your contract. You're going to have a 3-game suspension, but there's no more. Like, there's no more leniency here. Well, then he gets arrested for the drunk driving incident and just completely humiliating fashion. And it's still a minor miracle, if not more, that no one got hurt in that, when you consider he did not know where he was. And he had produced a receipt from a Burger King 7 hours earlier and an hour and a half away. It's truly mind blowing. But now he just seems detached from reality. You're not getting your job back. There's no chance of that happening. And you've lost the support and the goodwill of so many people around the university. And now you've got people being like, has Huggins gone off? Has he gone off the ledge here? Like, what is going on? What is this about? Because even if he is able to somehow litigate and get to a point where he can win a legal battle over whether he resigned or not, hello, West Virginia would simply just be like, bada bing, you're fired with cause. We're not paying you. Are you kidding me? With everything that he went through, the public embarrassment he brought upon the university. Pretty simple. So, weird story. He's damaged his legacy even more. Super messy. I just don't understand it. I honestly, I don't get it. I truly don't understand where this is coming from and why it would be remotely worth it to even consider it, let alone get to the point of hiring another attorney and having these legal volleys behind the scenes that then go public. And, then his lawyer gets depantsed by the West Virginia's general counsel. That was an absolute strut of a statement. Just boom, 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 A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Here's why he's resigned. And here's every single piece of documentation that we have. And here are the other lawyers that were involved in this case. Really strange situation. I don't know what the next step in this is, honestly. I guess maybe Huggins' attorney is going to try and bring about more legal battles with this. It's not going to end well. And it's sad. It is really, truly sad. And you see a man who obviously loved his job, but, effed around and found out finally. It just happened. It's over. There's going to be no more eras, phases, days with West Virginia and Bob Huggins working together. That's not going to happen. So if for whatever reason you were tuned out for the past few days, that has been the biggest news in all of college basketball. And I guess we'll wait and see what happens next. But the idea that Huggins would think that he didn't technically resign, and the George Costanza reference is probably beyond cliche at this point. But yes, it is the I didn't quit. I'm just gonna pretend this didn't happen. Come on, man. What are we doing here? So that's where we are with Huggins. Oh, by the way, Josh Eilert, one of Huggins' assistants, as a reminder, is the interim coach. Also a bad look for just the staff and it brings more of a maelstrom to the program in general. They've already got a tough enough job heading into next season where West Virginia will probably be picked with a new head coach. The roster's solid, but they've lost some portal pieces. They'll be picked for sure in the bottom half of the Big 12. And there's might be some that won't expect them to be, better than the 9th or 10th in the league now because of all of this and all this uncertainty. Huggins hasn't done his former colleagues well in this whole mess as it is. So that's the Huggins update. Didn't anticipate on a Bob Huggins update in July, but nonetheless, here we are. Let's get to the real meat of this show. Adam Finkelstein is going to join me after the break. I saw him down at Peach Jam. We're going to get into the big names that GP and I talked about, but also the top 10 prospects in 2024, a few big 2025 names to know, and everything else from the first part of the July period. Fink's going to join me on the other half of the break. But first, Nada, cue it up. You know what to do.
CBS Sports Network goes all in with the World Series of Poker. We're talking a full house of characters in a competition flush with cash. The World Series of Poker on CBS Sports Network.
All right, there he is. Adam Finkelstein, Director of Scouting for 247 Sports, joining us on the pod. We did this a year ago as well, you and I. I guess,
yes, but you didn't use the word depantsed prior to my arrival a year ago. So
is it pantsed or depantsed? I feel like when you put pants on, you're pantsing yourself, and then you're depantsing, right? You deplane.
I dare not speculate.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Listen, we did this a year ago. You informed the audience. I am sensing a pattern, by the way. Parrish is nowhere to be found. Don't know what that's about, but you know what? You and I, we roll. We roll together.
We'll make it work.
We're gonna make it work. Okay, so, well, let's start on the biggest guys here, because I do want your thoughts. By the way, this is your chance right now off the top, before we even get into this, for the people that are interested in recruiting, not just in July, but more year round. You do this pod thing on your own over at 247 Sports. Where can they find your show, and what is it called?
Yeah, so we've got College Basketball Recruiting Weekly, and that is a weekly recruiting show that they're now putting out in podcast form. You can find it on the 247 Sports YouTube page. You can always find it on the 247 Sports homepage as well. And it's basically very similar to the Eye on College Basketball podcast, just with a recruiting slant to it. So we just keep track of all the main recruiting headlines of the past week, talk about what's going on in the recruiting trail. Sometimes it'll be things like what's going on in college basketball and how that impacts the world of recruiting, what's going on in the NBA draft and how that impacts the world of recruiting. So all those things you can find 247 Sports YouTube page or the 247 Sports homepage.
Dig it. And yes, you will get much more intel on these players year round. But this episode is to kind of give a primer to the folks kind of checking in with the college hoop scene in July being so important with the recruiting calendar. So Adam is the guy to bring in on this. Okay, let's go with Cooper Flagg. We'll start with him. Right. Impossible not to be wowed by him. I actually thought, his Maine United team wound up making it to the 16U title game. They lost to Knight Riders and Cayden Boozer's team. We'll get to Boozer and the Boozer brothers in just a second here. But yeah, I don't know if we've ever really talked extensively. I've heard your deep thoughts on Cooper Flagg and where he stands in your eyes as a prospect. And oh, by the way, is Duke the overwhelming leader from a recruiting perspective? Just, the floor is yours on all things Cooper, Adam.
So Cooper, this national buzz really began at last year's Peach Jam because the rising senior class a year ago, not unlike this year, was somewhat underwhelming. And so, when people come in, whether it's national college basketball media like yourself or NBA scouts, they're kind of looking for somebody to be excited about. And they had to go find the younger players in order to do it last year. And, Cooper Flagg is a exceptionally talented young player, as is Cayden Boozer. And so that was kind of the buzz a year ago. And I'd never seen anything like that, like national media, NBA scouts gravitating towards the E15 division, which is basically the rising sophomores. To be candid with you, I watch very few of those games. We have other people on the 24/7 staff who do, but that is not my, emphasis. So Cooper was from Maine, right? And, obviously kind of somebody that I'd heard about being in Connecticut, as you are, for a long time. But the national buzz, it really, it was last summer where that really took off. And I wrote something kind of immediately after this because some of the hyperbole around him and Boozer last year for guys who were just rising sophomores was really over the top. And that's not a shot on those two at all because they're both incredibly talented. It's just kind of a realization about like, hey, these guys are rising sophomores. We just saw what all this early hype did to somebody like Amani Bates. Let's just give them time to run their own race and figure out who they are before we start calling them Kevin McHale and stuff like that, which is literally something that happened last summer. So here's what happened. Cooper Flagg goes to Montverde Academy. They have a very good season, as they always do. He averaged 9 points a game. He was their fourth leading scorer. Good year, but hardly like Kevin McHale. And coming into the spring, both he and Boozer. Now, the interesting thing is they're both twins. They both have a twin brother. Cam's twin brother, Cayden, is another nationally ranked prospect. And Cooper's twin brother, Ace, also plays with him in Montverde. So they both wanted to play with their twin brother. So they both decided to play in the E16 division, although they both probably would have been the two best, arguably prospects players in the EYBL. So it makes the E16 division now much more interesting than it always has been. Long and the short of it is you get to Peach Jam. Cooper was incredible. I mean, his defensive instincts off the ball. I made this comment, and again, I try and stay away from the hyperbole, but I can't remember a player under 6'10" who was a better shot blocker at this same stage. He patrolled the lane so effectively, blocked so many shots, changed so many others. His defensive instincts are off the charts. His passing ability is the thing that people don't talk about. He's 6'8", every bit of 6'8", maybe 6'9". And you can see some flashes of the offensive creation. He loves to throw the ball to himself off the backboard. He's got great footwork. He loves to step through and got all the signs of like a true mismatch player. Although I do think the skill set, the handle and all that, the shooting can still come to evolve. From a recruiting standpoint, yes, Duke has been perceived as the heavy favorite from very early on. But one of the notable developments this week were the defending national champions making it very clear that they were going to be front and center for this one. There are certainly other schools trying as well, but UConn was there every single game. Danny Hurley was there very frequently down the stretch. So this is no longer perceived as Duke and only Duke. So that's going to be very interesting on that front. And then there's the other kind of elephant in the room is, does he end up 2024? Because he's old enough that if he reclassified, he would be draft eligible after just 1 year of college.
Yeah, there's a growing. Well, Paris said on the Friday show that we did that he absolutely expects that Cooper Flagg will ultimately be a 2024 player, because based on just conversations and frankly speculation around the Peach Jam. I do have a curiosity, and I don't know if you have intel on this or not, but do we know if Cooper, when it comes to his college commitment, would he prefer to be a package deal, so to speak, with Ace, or is that not really known whether or not, eventually, like they play together now, they go to Montford and they're obviously on the same team, but they might not wind up at the same college together, or is the preference there with both of them and maybe the family that they wind up going to the same school?
I really don't have anything to report on that front. What I do know is that this is very much a family decision. Mom is an assistant coach for Maine United. She's on the bench.
Which I love, by the way. She is into it. It is awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
And by the way, a former college basketball player to boot. Yes.
No doubt about it. And credit where credit is due. Ace Flagg had a terrific week. Guarded Cayden Boozer himself, put up good numbers and proved himself really at that level, at the E16 level, to be a very, very good player and help them win. I think that's the key there. So, whether or not this is a package deal, I don't really know. I think there are a lot of different variables to try and sort through, whether it's year, the impact of whether he wants to come on his own or with his brother. If he reclasses, does his brother reclass? So there's a lot of things for interested coaches to unpack there. What I will say is this, like, if Duke is really serious about recruiting Cooper and Cam, and they both want to play with their brothers, that's potentially four players right there. So that's it starts to get complicated. So the short answer to your question is I don't think we know definitively what the dynamics of that situation will be yet.
All right, let's move on to Cayden Boozer, but also we'll get into Cayden. Cayden's ranked 13th in his class, I believe, and a steady, strong, heady player. Was really good in the semis and then made so many key plays in the 16U title game where Boozer and the Knight Riders team beat Cooper Flagg's Maine United team. Maine United beat Knight Riders in the Wednesday matchup when NBA scouts were there. Media could be there. I was not there. Coaches were not yet there, so they wound up actually splitting, but Knight Riders wound up winning it. Cayden Boozer, thoughts on his game and if he just seems to have a little my thought from this is actually talking to him a little bit. Maybe he is an overwhelming Duke lean. I honestly don't know. Obviously, his father played there, but it seems like there are a number of high major programs that are vigorously recruiting him. And whereas Cooper would be a candidate to reclass to 24, Cameron is locked in on 25.
Yeah, he is not. And I think the big factor there is the age eligibility for the NBA draft. Even if he did reclassify, he would have to play 2 years of college basketball as the years currently stipulate. The thing with Cam, and we actually talked about that on this week's episode of College Basketball Recruiting Weekly, he was sick all week. He was sick. So I heard, and he played through it, and he didn't tell anybody. And, he's not the type to whine or complain. But if you've seen Cayden Boozer, if you saw him a week prior at the NBA camp, if you saw him during the high school season, if you saw him during the E16 regular season, the guy you saw at the Peach Jam was not the same player. And I think that's the unfortunate part, is because so many people with a platform come to the Peach Jam as an opportunity to kind of see the next, the stars of tomorrow and make their judgments based on that. And really nobody, I hadn't seen it publicized anywhere that he was, really under the weather. Yeah. But again, it was pretty obvious to those of us who watched a lot of them. You look at his shooting splits in the EYBL regular season; they are absolutely off the charts. He's an elite passer. He's just a winning player. But at Peach Jam, when you're playing for 7 straight days, you can see everybody start to wear down. Well, Cam started to wear down by like Wednesday. I mean, he wasn't himself. So I think that, and I've been saying this about these two, and even I'm going to add AJ Devonsa to that conversation as well. And I know we're going to talk about all 3 of these guys, but everybody wants to who's best, and that's the fun of it. But I think the bottom line is it's possible to say Cooper was incredible and really raised his stock without taking anything away from Cam, and just saying hey, he's impacted winning more so than anybody throughout the course of the year, and just was not 100%, and yet his team still won. So that's kind of the way I look at it, is he wasn't 100%. He fought through it. He didn't make excuses, but we didn't see the best of Cayden Boozer this week.
Okay, good to know. I did not know he was under the weather, and even if that was the case, he was still impressive. But yes, there were definitely noticeable spurts in many games where he was not quite as impactful. Let's talk on Cayden real quick before I get to the other highlight players here. For those who might not know Cayden Boozer's game, how would you describe what he is and how he is different from Cameron? Because obviously Cameron's received much more pub, even though Cayden is also a 5-star prospect.
Yeah, I mean, he's 5 or 6 inches shorter, first of all, while Cam is kind of like a 4 or 5 positionally. Cayden's really a big point guard. Had a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio in the E16 regular season, and that's why he jumped the rankings in our latest update. He's also been a staple, like his brother, with USA Basketball, and been an effective player there. So you're talking about big, not just in terms of his height, but also in terms of the strength of his frame. Point guard who can really see the floor, pass the ball, and creates matchups because of that body type. He's not the same, for as good as he is, he's not the same dynamic level of talent as his brother, as Cooper, as AJ. But make no mistake about it, he's one of the most productive and efficient guards in that national class right now. And I think that the potential for a package deal there is probably higher, because even on his own merit, Cayden is someone that those high major schools would all be recruiting regardless of Cam.
Yeah, and I don't know if Cayden will prove to be a one and done talent. I have no idea. But I can see him being a player who, if he winds up staying multiple years in college, is top 20 player by the end of his sophomore kind of season. There's a lot of real good promise there. A very, very fun player to watch there. And we'll wait and see. They're young guys. They're barring something that I can't see coming soon. We don't know where they're going to play for college for a while here, but it was great to see them. Okay, before we get to Devonsa, let's talk about Harper, because this, I can't ever remember. You may well remember 3 years like this, but I just never remember ever a year at the Peach Jam where not even I don't even think it was the Bronny year, to be honest, where a non-rising senior was more talked about than the best player in the 17U division, right? And that was the case.
It was last 2 years. I mean, we've kind of been, but other than that, I mean, this is kind of brand new for us.
That's true. But Rutgers, there's an interesting developing plot point with Rutgers. So Ace Bailey is the number 2 player in the class of 24. He is already committed to Rutgers.
He is.
And then you've got Harper, who is the number 1 player, plays with the New York Renaissance. The Wrens made the semis, I think. And he had a solid week. Now, Harper was with Team USA. He flew over to Europe. He played over there. That team actually didn't wind up even medaling. Came back. If my calendar is right here, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong. I think because of that, he didn't even go to NBPA top 100. I think he came,
correct.
Came from Europe right to Peach Jam, right?
Yeah, he and Trey Johnson both made that trip. They were both on the floor. I think it was 36 hours later after losing that bronze medal game.
Crazy. And right? I took that into account when watching him play. Because that travel is just insane. But yeah, how would you evaluate Harper's game and his recruitment at this point, which is obviously intriguing because Rutgers involved with the #1 ranked recruit period certainly turns heads, and the fact that they've already got the #2 guy in the class. Yeah, I don't know if he'll wind up going there, but it certainly is.
It's a very realistic possibility. I mean, I think there's 5 schools that are technically in the mix, but the vast majority of us expect this to come down to Rutgers and Duke. Harper's older brother just graduated from Rutgers, had a terrific career there. Obviously, his dad, Ron Harper, former NBA All-Star, world champion with the Chicago Bulls, shared the backcourt with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. But Dylan Harper is somewhat similar, somewhat similar to his dad in that he is just a big, well-rounded guard. Dylan is a lefty. He's about 6'4", 6'5". He's long. He's strong. He's got a terrific feel for the game. I mean, he can just play within the flow of what's going on. And if you watch that USA basketball team, while they did not finish the way they wanted, Dylan was someone who earned a lot of praise because he could impact the game without being the quote unquote man. You know, he didn't need the ball in his hands and the freedom to go to work every possession like maybe some other high profile guys do. But then you put him with the Wrens where he does have the ball in his hands and everything does start with him. And he plays that role to perfection as well. To perfection is probably an overstatement, but he plays that role extremely well. So I think that the takeaway for me, and I tweeted this on Saturday after he really just carried his team to the semifinals, was that for all the talk about the young guys, Dylan Harper made it pretty clear that he is the top rising senior, at least in the EYBL. Ace Bailey, who is committed to Rutgers, he plays on AOT, which is a program previously sponsored by Nike, but is now independent. So he was at independent events, and the reality is he just doesn't have as many eyeballs on him. But he tried out for that USA basketball 19 and under team. He got the flu, and so he wasn't able to continue. But he would have made that team.
He looked awesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
he didn't show up. I guess for one session in Colorado Springs, and it was like, where is he? He got sick.
Right.
He looked awesome, Adam.
Yeah,
love his potential. Yes.
No, and the challenge when is to be able to evaluate him against high level competition. And so for me, when I went out to that setting, and you were there as well, that was my biggest objective going in, was to measure Ace Bailey against high level talent, not just rising seniors, but also incoming college freshmen and even some rising college sophomores. And he did. I mean, he's 6'8", every bit of 6'8". He's long, he's athletic, but he's also got like a really clean shooting stroke. And you put that stuff all together, and he may have more sheer talent than anyone. Dylan Harper right now is the more efficient basketball player, but that race is not done by a long shot. So do they both end up at Rutgers? It's very possible. Does Ace Bailey have a chance to overtake Dylan Harper for #1? That's certainly a possible outcome in the next 8 to 10 months. But it all makes for some pretty good theater, because it's also very possible that Rutgers comes away with the top 2 players in the class and outduels Duke for one of them.
Listen, ultimately, I really, it doesn't matter to me where these guys go. But having said that, I do like interesting, and I do like different. And I've said this a few times over the years on this show. When you have a top 5, top 10 prospect that picks a destination that is not, the customary one,
right?
Rutgers getting the top 2 players would be an incredible storyline for college basketball. Duke is going to get the dudes, okay? And Shire and that staff have continued to recruit at the level that they were doing in Krzyzewski's final few years here. So maybe Dylan Harper does go play for Duke, and if he does, well, more power to him, and Duke will enter the 24-25 season as a top 5 program again, without a doubt. But if we were able to get Harper and Bailey playing at Rutgers, it would bring a different kind of energy. It would be really cool. And for Peichel, who has been a guy that, he has done what was once seen as borderline impossible at the university and made Rutgers into a real factor most seasons in the Big Ten. And now, Brandon Knight is his ace assistant and has been in there and been such a major factor. It's something intriguing to watch. I don't know if last thing on these guys before we get to DeBonsa, again, I don't know. I just want to tee this up for you, and if you know it, cool. If not, that's fine. But there was buzz that Harper might announce soon. Do we? By soon, is that like? Do we know a few weeks? Like the next month? Could it drag on? Do we know what his situation is when it comes to picking a school?
Travis Branham just did some reporting on that over on the 24/7 Sports site. I would say it's somewhat fluid. I know like like Bill Self in Kansas, they're trying to get in the mix there. Mike Woodson in Indiana, they're trying to get in the mix there again. I think this comes down to Rutgers and Duke, but there are, whenever you're talking about a player of this magnitude, especially in this day and age of college basketball, there's a lot of different variables to try and line up before you make a commitment. So I think it's safe to say that we are all on commitment watch, but that we don't currently believe anything is totally imminent.
All right, let's get to the 226 guys here. AJ DeBonsa, and then I want to get your thoughts on Tyron Stokes as well. By the way, these guys play, they're teammates, right?
They're going to be teammates. They have not been teammates yet. They're going to be teammates. In fact, it was a game, they went head to head in a game I called on NBA TV. And I think they're even going to be roommates because we interviewed Tyron afterwards. And I said to him, it's like his first time on national TV. So, you're just trying to help the kids get acclimated a little bit. And I was like, hey man, you got bragging rights now. And he's like, yeah, I do, so that was fun. But AJ led the Peach Jam.
He's the best scorer in high school right now, right? Fair?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's probably fair. He led the Peach Jam, meaning the 17 and under division, in scoring. At one point during the week, it was by more than 5 points per game over the second leading scorer. I think it ended up at about 4 points per game. But he's from the state of Massachusetts. So again, I saw him play for the first time in 8th grade. He was playing up with his high school team. And I remember at the time, I tweeted something about him without putting his name in the tweet. Just said, just saw an 8th grader score 20-something points in a high school game. Impossible not to be impressed, but at the same time, you just hope he maintains his humility and work ethic to keep getting better. It was something to that extent. I'm paraphrasing myself, but he's done that and then some, because his rate of improvement has been off the charts. So for me, when you're going to talk about who the best young prospect in the country is, it is not a 2-player discussion. It's a 3-player discussion. And there's no discussion that AJ DeBonsa should be left out of, because for as dominant as Boozer and Flagg were, this guy was equally dominant offensively. 6'8", 6'9", really skilled shot creator, scores over people from the mid post. He's got some athleticism around the rim. His skill set has improved by leaps and bounds, and he does it in ways that translate levels. So he's going to be able to get his shot off at the next level. He's going to be transferring out to prolific prep in California, where Tyron Stokes spent his freshman year last year. As I said, they're going to be teammates. So this is kind of heartbreaking for the New England, high school basketball fans to see him leave the area, just as Cooper Flagg did, who's from Maine. But, he's special. He's a special talent. He's incredibly gifted. And the most important thing is he continues to improve at a rapid rate. And when you start to project out these youngsters and you start to learn from some of the mistakes of the past, you have to identify both the obvious talent and the second, and equally important, is the rate of improvement, and AJ's is rapid.
GP wrote a column on DeBonsa that you can read at cbssports.com as well. Quick on Tyron Stokes before we get to the 24 guys in the top 10. I want to just do a quick rapid fire on that. I like Stokes more in the game that you called. Is he well positioned to eventually be the number one in the 2026 class? Because DeBonsa, DeBonsa's older than Cayden Boozer. There's a feeling that eventually he could reclass to 25, and if that was the case, and we got ways to go here, so I'm not trying to get too far ahead, but I flat out loved Stokes' game. I guess he just doesn't have the perimeter shooting yet, and that's I apparently his biggest room for growth at this young stage of his life. But I saw a player that seemed, I don't know, ready for the moment, well-developed, really good defensive instincts. I love his passing. And there were definitely stretches when he played against DeBonsa and Expressions where I was like, I kind of like Stokes more. I got to be honest. DeBonsa's a live wire. Like, it's undeniable. His scoring is really the thing that's putting him over the top. But I just don't find the gap to be all that big. What's your scouting report on Stokes? And do we think that there's a good chance that maybe he actually winds up being the number one guy in 26 if and when DeBonsa reclasses?
Yeah, so exactly. If assuming that people end up in the class where they can be one and done, you would then say, okay, Cooper Flagg could be 2024, AJ DeBonsa could be 2025. If that comes to fruition, let me just say this. I'll phrase it this way. If DeBonsa were to reclassify tomorrow when we debuted 2026 rankings, I think Stokes would be number one right now. It is so early on. Like, there are players in this class who we've never heard of before who will end up being not just NBA players, but potentially, if history's any indication, NBA All-Stars who've literally not started to evolve yet. Yep. So I hesitate. I tell people this all the time. everybody wants to get ranked early, but the reality is when you get ranked or identified early, it's a lot easier to quote unquote fall than it is to rise, because half of the best prospects haven't even emerged yet. So that's the challenge when you're identified at this early of an age. But certainly Stokes, after AJ DeBonsa, I think is in a position right now where he's the most notable prospect in the class. If you've never seen him play, here's what you have to understand. First of all, he's built like an NFL running back, and maybe a tight end, I should say, because he's big, he's ultra powerful, and he's explosive when he gets downhill. That is usually a prototype that is concerning, like long term. That's like an early bloomer, someone who is just bigger and stronger at an early age, and so that's the basis of their productivity. And oftentimes that doesn't pan out long term because other people catch up physically. So unless your game keeps evolving, right, then you might be in trouble. Paulo Banchero is actually a good example of somebody who was that early, but then his game kept evolving, so he was able to maintain his status. Stokes, I think, like DeBonsa, has already shown a really impressive progression of his skill set. The shooting is noticeably better than it was a year ago. The passing is really starting to come to the forefront. So, and the other thing is, I should say this, as we start to project how he's going to evolve physically, people don't realize he's actually young for his grade. So although he's built like a 25-year-old man, he's actually the correct age, if not maybe even a little young for a rising high school sophomore. So what his frame ends up looking like, it's hard to imagine he's not close to maxed out because he's already so powerful, but he is so young and he is continuing to improve at such a rapid rate. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about what he could be down the road. But right now, like physically, he's able to compete. Like you could put him in a college practice tomorrow and he wouldn't be out of place at all.
All right, good deal. Let's do some rapid fire. I'm going to read off 3 through 10. This is the class of 24. So these are the rising seniors. They will play in college next year. Okay.
Got it.
I'm going to give the name, where they're from, and the schools that they've either committed to or that I understand that they're involved with. You give me the nut graph, what kind of player they are, and if you've got anything to add from a recruiting standpoint, their situation, absolutely 100%, please chime in. All right, so third in the 24 list. Actually, before I get rolling, when will 247 update its 2024 ranking? Like, is that coming soon, or is that like...
That'll be in August, because
okay,
we're back on the road this weekend.
Yes.
The recruiting world's kind of back in Vegas for the most part, although there's things all over the place, but Vegas is the hub this weekend. And then the NCAA Academy at the end of the month is going to be in Memphis. So we will update everything kind of post summer in the month of August.
Okay, dig it. So I'm about to read you 3 through 10. When did this list get updated? Like, what is this reflective of?
First week in June.
Okay, so first week in June, so relatively recent. That's good context there. Okay, third is Trey Johnson. He's out of Branson, Missouri, played with Houston Hoops down at the Peach Jam. Baylor, Kansas, Kentucky, Alabama, Texas, Arkansas are all in pursuit of Trey Johnson. What do the people need to know?
Volume scorer, previous number one, Dylan Harper, overtook him in June, but just a guy who is bucket hunting, and he can score at different levels. Originally from the state of Texas, he's going to go to boarding school in Missouri, but the perception was early on is that it was looking like a Texas and Baylor showdown. This is back when Chris Beard was still at Texas. Obviously, things have evolved since then. Kansas has made a really hard push. Schools like Arkansas, Alabama, and Kentucky are now among his top 6 as well. But people do wonder if he's going to want to stay home or go back home and play, because he is from the state of Texas and probably the most prolific volume scorer in the class.
Number 4 is a player named Flory Badunga. He is from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, plays on the Adidas circuit. I saw him in person last week at the Adidas 3-Star Select Basketball Championship event. Currently lives in Kokomo, Indiana. 6'8" center type. Duke, Kentucky, Indiana, Kansas seem to be the 4 most in hot pursuit. What do we know about Badunga? And am I saying his last name correctly?
As far as I know,
Okay.
He's a big fan of the Beach Boys and their throwback Kokomo song.
All right, but listen, I'm gonna need to get his thoughts on Pet Sounds, because
I tried to do that one.
I can't have him digging into the 80s stuff. Okay,
I tried to do that for you there. Just trying to speak your language. It's your pod. The most physically dominant big man in the class, 6'9", probably in shoes, maybe 6'8" without, but long, explosively athletic lefty, rips the rim down. Blocked shots just emphatically, really changes end, trying to stretch his game. His best basketball is when he plays with the motor to complement that explosive athleticism. And typically he does. But from what I understand, the day you guys were there, it didn't necessarily play with quite as hard as he usually does. Nevertheless, I mean, the reality is these are still kids. There's days when they get a little bit bored. College coaches weren't in the building when you guys were there. And I expect in college, he's going to be the high level athlete with the high motor. But I will also give him credit for he is kind of force feeding the progression of his skill set, but simultaneously expanding. You know, he's become better at putting the ball on the floor and starting to stretch his game a little bit. But just the power, the length, the athleticism, the mobility, just the most physically dominant big man in the class. He recently told our Deshaun London at 24/7 Sports that he was approaching a decision. He hasn't like narrowed his list officially, but there's a handful of schools who were obviously following him: Michigan, Kansas, Indiana, Auburn, Cincinnati, and now Duke most recently getting in there. So those are some of the schools to watch out for him. And it sounds like I would certainly expect him to go in the next, couple of, whether it's weeks or months, but certainly in time for the early signing period.
Number 5 is Ian Jackson. He is a Carolina commit. Also, wait, did he make the U19 or did he?
Yeah, he was there.
Yep. That's what I thought. Also on the Adidas circuit, 6'4" shooting guard from the Bronx. Played with I think the New York Wizards on the Adidas.
The
Whiz Kids. There we go.
Yep.
Ian Jackson. What do you like most about his game?
Wiry, competitive athlete who plays and attacks on both ends of the floor. Can be a little hit or miss. Like you see him on a bad day, can be like, you see him on a good day, you're like,
yes.
Wow. But at the USA basketball trials, he's historically been very good with USA basketball. And he made this team this year because I thought he had a really good trials. And he played. He was in the rotation. But someone who can get it done on both ends of the floor. You will remember that there was speculation, even though he's committed to North Carolina, that he could be a candidate to reclass and join them right away, along with Elliot Cadeau. He has since put that to rest and said, no, he's going to go back to high school. He's old enough where he could go to college right now. There's also been speculation that maybe Rick Pitino was trying to see if he might have any interest in staying home with St. John's. Ian Jackson has gone on the record and saying, no, he's firm in his commitment to North Carolina, but those are all things to monitor. Again, a wiry athlete and just hyper competitive player on both ends of the floor.
Good interview as well.
Good kid. I like him.
Yeah, Carolina fans will like him if indeed he winds up playing there. Number 6 is a 6'9" center out of Baltimore and a projected Maryland commit. He's a 100% crystal ball right now at 247 Sports. Derek Queen. Adam, was this... Am I misremember? Actually, I wanted to ask you. I didn't want to fact check it, but I feel like he was like formerly a number 1 player. I say in his class, but this when he was like 13, he was considered the best in his age group. Is that right?
So you know what happened in the midst of COVID? He was someone like the NIBC, which is the premier high school league, was doing its startup event in the midst of COVID, and it was almost like a mini bubble. And at the time, Derek Queen was, I believe, a freshman at St. Francis Academy. And the event was held in Northern Virginia. So they were brought in. And again, like everybody was tested, you were sent to the hotel, and it was, basically not quite like the NBA bubble, but there were a lot of protocols in place. And Derek Queen was phenomenal then. I mean, I remember coming down, I want to say he had 20 games because he's got magnetic hands. He can pass. He's got great touch, kind of like he's a little bit of a throwback because he's not an explosive athlete and his conditioning's always kind of been a work in progress, but he's clever with his footwork and just his hands are incredible. That's his best asset. So he was at that point, like I was at ESPN at the time. And I think, when we debuted our rankings, he was number 1 then. And I think most people in the industry, 24/7 Sports included, had him at that point. Now, since then, like I said, when you get labeled number 1 that early on, it's tough because other players are going to emerge, and that has happened. And Derek, because he's not an explosive athlete, there are questions about how his game could ultimately translate to the highest levels. But from a productivity standpoint, there's been very little to not like. He was arguably Montverde's most productive player this year. And again, that's a Montverde Academy team that had Cooper Flagg on it. And Derek Queen was probably their focal point offensively. He or Liam McNeely were the 2 guys who led them in scoring. And again, just a constant double threat, incredible hands, a really good passer, really clever with his footwork, and has the touch where, I'm actually surprised he's not more of a floor spacer at this point. I would have thought with his hands in touch, he would have been able to develop his shooting. Everybody talks about the body and the athleticism, but I think the untapped potential is if he can stretch his skill set out to the arc.
7th is Carter Knox, his 6'5" wing from Tampa, younger brother of Kevin Knox. Carter Knox, that's Carter with a K, being recruited by Kentucky, of course, Louisville, Auburn, Arkansas, LSU, and Florida State. Played for a pretty loaded Florida Rebels team down at Nike EYBL, Adam.
Yeah, he and Liam McNeely, the aforementioned Liam McNeely from Montfort Academy, are the 1-2 punch on that team. Carter Knox, one of the leading scorers in the EYBL. Really long wing. He's about 6'5", strong body, inside out scorer, volume scorer, though. Things are kind of revolve around him with that Florida Rebels team, but it'll be very interesting to see if this turns into John Calipari versus Kenny Payne round 2. Yeah. That's going to be a fun one. They were both front and center for quite a few of his games this week, and did some, was it you who tweeted this or somebody else who was like, oh, the fake hug between these two? It was.
I did not tweet that. I think I might have bothered Cal for a couple minutes during a Florida Rebels game. I'm trying to remember when I actually interviewed him, and I think it was front and center for the Rebels, but he was amicable enough. McNeely's the 8th guy. He's from Plano, Texas. Is that an Indiana versus Texas battle as far as we can tell, or is there anyone else in there for McNeely?
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma, Kansas, Alabama, Michigan are also included in his final 6. I've got a hot take about Liam McNeely because
let's hear it. Other than he feels like he should be a part of the cast of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Liam McNeely feels like he's fits right in, but yeah.
I think in this class, it's possible that Liam McNeely ends up being the most valuable recruit for college basketball because he and Derek Queen are 2 guys that may not be one and done. There's questions about how they could project. And if those guys play more than one season, like if you said to a college coach, would you rather have 1 year of Dylan Harper or 2 or 3 years of Liam McNeely? Yeah. I think you'd be hard pressed not to say 2 or 3 years of Liam McNeely because, again, he was the guy at Montfort. He and Derek Queen, they were the focal points. This is a highly skilled 6'7", 6'8" wing and equally smart. He shoots it. He passes it. He plays a style that is going to translate really easily to the college level. Now, people are going to question his foot speed, and that's fair, but he is a very heady positional defender. I mean, you don't see him out of position. You don't see him giving up straight line drives. There's sometimes cases where he's just guarding someone who's got a little bit more athletic pop. But he's smart enough to always be in gaps and always kind of be volume man and make it difficult on those guys. So he's one of, I think, the most skilled, smartest, most efficient players in the class. And I think he's going to be one heck of a college basketball player.
I love the guy that's 9th. Drake Powell, a Carolina commit. Parents both went there. 6'5" power wing, a vocal teammate from Pittsboro, North Carolina. I don't know if he's a one-and-done talent, but to what you just said about McNeely, I mean, Carolina's got 2 guys in the top 10 here, and they just seem like they will eventually be just tremendous additions to the Tar Heels under Hubert Davis.
So when we put him in the top 10, we took a little bit of slack because he didn't put up really big numbers in the EYBL regular season. And so, like, for as great as the stats are, I think there's a subset of the population in the grassroots basketball world that only look at the stats and are kind of unable to go beyond that. And on the stats alone, Drake Powell, I mean, he didn't average double figures through 4 EYBL sessions. Now he came out.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick here. When you watch him play, it is the most obvious, undeniable. This dude is affecting the game every single time down the floor, whether he's touching the ball or not. It is irrepressible how much impact he has on it. He was maybe my favorite player I saw high wattage guys over the past few days down at Nike EYBL.
But he's got a few things he's got. He's got adequate positional size for any level. He's a hyper competitive player and a high level athlete. So he's got the physical markers that translate. The knock on him, he's a really impactful defender. The knock on him has been his offense. And at those USA basketball trials that we've mentioned that you and I were both at, I got like I did the Mike Schmitz slow-mo look at his jump shot thing there.
Did you ask Schmitz if you could do that?
Yeah, I don't know if Schmitz, I should send him a check or something. We'll see if Paramount can take care of that. But there's nothing broken about his shot. And somebody, people are like, it's not perfect. I was like, no, it's not perfect, but it's a whole lot better than you would expect for someone who shot 18% from the 3-point line. So when you add all that up, and like there's context in this too, like that, his team had it wasn't like a great fit for anybody there. Yeah, I mean, on our show yesterday, Eric Bossi said like he thinks he's maybe top 3. Travis Branham said maybe top 5. So, people thought we went too far by making him top 10. Well, we're about to go way too far, I think, because the competitiveness, the athleticism, and the signs of the offensive potential are starting to become more obvious for those who are kind of only judging the stat sheet.
Wow, how about that? Yeah, that's good stuff. 10 is Isaiah Evans. I mentioned him on the previous show with GP, out of Huntersville, North Carolina. Duke commit, 6'6", slinky scorer, and
slinky scorer. I love new type. What does that mean?
He's long armed. He's slippery. And what I said on the show on Friday, the Brandon Ingram comp is you can't get away from it. Like the way
he's all arms and legs. He looks like
yes.
Yeah. So the thing about Isaiah's committed to Duke, but he's not the prototypical Duke kid, despite the Brandon Ingram comp, because he's like a guy who loves to catch it in the mid post and kind of, because of his length and he's got a really high release point, he can score over anybody with these kind of high volume, tough twos. That is kind of the antithesis of what you think of Duke basketball. But he's a sneaky good passer, and he's got all kinds of upside. And again, we have people on our staff who are super high on him and his potential. And when it comes to sheer talent, I don't know that there are 5 guys in the class who are better than him. So when the productivity and the efficiency, most of all, starts to catch up with that talent, he's another guy that whether he's at 10 right now, could certainly end up higher than that.
I saw one of his games, I think it was Friday, and I was standing next to an SEC head coach, and it was the head coach and one of his assistants, me, and then another assistant from an ACC school. And he goes, no, he's different. When it goes in, it sounds different. You just wait. And like literally the next possession, we're down there. He takes a deep 3, and it's like nothing but net. And it was just like the perfect net swish. And he's like, I told you, it sounds different. It was a really cool, really fun moment. We got a little more to get to. Nada, let's queue up. You know what? Let's go for another break here. Yeah, this is a big episode. Listen, we wanted to give you as much as possible. So a couple more big names in 25 to know, and then some just general takeaways from Peach Jam. We'll get to that right after this break.
You gonna start the engine sometime soon, Erica?
Do you know the odds of all of us being here at this time? It's improbable, and yet here we are, together.
Hold on to your saddles.
All right, let's get to a few more 25 guys. Remember, this is the class of Flagg and Boozer. I got 4 guys. One is Darren Peterson out of Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. He's a 6'5" shooting guard. Seems like Kentucky, Carolina, Ohio State, Michigan are in on him. Again, these Michigan are 25 State, players, so we're not going to get too nuts with where they are in terms of their development, but just a general, general.
Best guard in the class. Best guard in the class. The USA basketball 16 and under team this year. He was one of their best players, along with Boozer's on that team, Koa Pete's on that team, and Darren Peterson was the best guard. Really, he's always been a high-profile national kid, but in the last, this grassroots season, he's made it clear that he is in the top 5 in that class and the best guard in that class. Hasn't spoken publicly about like narrowing the list, but he's going to be able to go wherever he wants.
Yeah, as we get into the 25 class, obviously a lot of these players are not going to have schools down to a narrow list and trying to forecast where they're going. It's a little bit foggier. Koa Pete, you just mentioned him on the Adidas circuit. Did see him. I am interested in his overall projection, because if you told me he was, a quality player that maybe needed a second year of college, it wouldn't stun me. He's a 6'8" power forward center from Gilbert, Arizona. There seem to be 15 plus high majors that are recruiting him at this point, but maybe I'm slightly too down on his projection. He's definitely he's a beast for his age. What do people need to know about Koa Pete?
Well, he's that early bloomer, that you get a little nervous about. So last year, first of all, played with Compton Magic, came out as a freshman last year, joins 3SSB, and he leads the whole circuit in scoring. Basically, he did what AJ Devonsa did a week ago. He did it last year as a freshman. He was that guy. So while Cooper Flagg and Cam Boozer are playing E15, or he was not only playing E17 at Adidas, but he was leading them in scoring. And he's continued to be every bit as dominant. Now, people question the upside because he is, He was big and strong and has kind of a broader build at an earlier age, but credit where credit is due. He has really sculpted his physique in the last year. He has expanded his game. And I would call him almost like a playmaking mismatch four. Like, you put the ball in his hands and you let him operate off the bounce. He's a way better passer than people realize right now. He's not going to like blow right by you, but he gets his body on you and you can't stop him from going where he wants. He's going to have to make the three ball a more consistent part of his arsenal, given how the body type is going to translate. But again, on that E16 team, he didn't take a backseat to anyone. It was him, Peterson, and Cayden Boozer were the guys that were very clearly the leaders of those teams, and what is widely considered to be one of the best USA basketball teams at this junior national level that we've seen in a long time. So Koa Pete has just been as productive as any player in the class at every step along the way so far.
Two more. One is Bryson Tiller. He's 6'8" power forward, it seems, from Atlanta, who I get he's going to play with OTE, but then
he did. Last year was his first year there.
And
yeah.
So, but he will ultimately go to college, correct? That's the plan or the idea?
That's as it is currently states, yes.
Okay, and he plays on the Under Armour circuit, right?
He does. He's with Atlanta Express. He's always been with Atlanta Express. He's from the Atlanta area. Last year was his first year at Overtime Elite. Overtime Elite is based in Atlanta, so I think it was an easier transition for him. He was part of the new OTE initiative where they maintained their college eligibility.
Yes.
So he is, as a rising junior, he's entering his second year there. He's another one who's just kind of a man-child. I mean, he is long. He is powerful. You could put him in a college game right now, and he would look every bit like he belongs. He's more skilled than people give him credit for. In fact, he's worked really hard to polish his mid-range game and to extend his shooting range. And if there is a knock, it's that sometimes he doesn't fully utilize all of his physical tools and just punish people inside the paint. But he's a top 5 prospect in this class because of just the natural talent, the length, the strength, the body type, and the underrated skill set. And it's going to be interesting because, there's another guy from the state of Georgia kind of chasing him who's really the antithesis. And I think that might be the next guy you asked.
It is. We'll get to him. And just even going through these names, it's why, like, man, the 25 class is just,
it's really
good. So Caleb Wilson's the last guy we'll talk about here. He's a 6'9" combo forward from Atlanta, played with Georgia Stars, was just down at Peach Jam. And granted, we're between these guys and Flagg and Boozer, and even like Cayden Boozer. I just, there's a lot of dudes in this class, man. Like, if this guy, if you tell me that Caleb Wilson ultimately settles, so I'm not saying he will settle there, but if you told me, like, at the end of it, he winds up as like the 7th ranked prospect or the 2nd ranked prospect in his class, I could believe either one, and it would speak to the strength overall in the class. Yeah,
there's a wide range of potential outcomes for him. Caleb Wilson, another guy who's playing up EYBL. But what's unique about him is he is, of all the names we've talked about so far, he is the most physically undeveloped. And while that may sound like a negative, I actually view it as somewhat of a positive, because it means he's got all this upside still left to kind of discover. And he's someone who hasn't filled out his frame yet, is very clearly has his best basketball still in front of him. He got a triple-double on the last day he played in the EYBL, and I think it was Saturday, in a game that was on at least the NBA app. He has phenomenal instincts, both ends of the floor, and is just someone who's got a ton of natural talent. And I think, to your point, very possible. I mean, he's at 6 right now. I will tell you, internally, we had people who wanted him in the top 5 right now. But the fact that he and Tiller are both from Georgia was interesting, because they're polar opposites. Like, Tiller's already a man physically, and you have Caleb Wilson who's just like hasn't even really started to grow into his body, but that does leave him a lot of runway for future growth.
All right, let's do a quick recap of what we saw down in Georgia, and then even Adam's got a little bit more. So Team Takeover. Oh, by the way, Team Takeover won the title, 76-61 over Vegas Elite. So is Tyron Stokes' team. Best prospect on Takeover is Darren Harris. Is that accurate, Adam?
No.
He's the Duke commit. He had 28 points in that game.
Yeah, he was the best player in the finals. Takeover is a team that does it by balance. Patrick Ngumba is their center. He played through a rolled ankle, but he's got offers from Duke, Kentucky, UConn, Kansas State. I would say those are the kind of the big four. We just wrote about him as we're doing a big scouting series. One of the best big men in the EYBL. Darren Harris, one of the best shooters in the country.
Yeah.
He's the one who carried them in the semifinals. Highest ranked guy in that team is Donnie Freeman. He's a top 30 kid, mobile, 6'9", 4-man, going to Syracuse. So like, this is the thing with TakeOver. Everybody on the court was a high major kid.
Yeah.
So, and they had extreme balance. Their third Peach Jam championship ever. So one of the most successful programs in the history of Nike grassroots basketball.
Yeah, they're out of Greater DC. That is Hunter Dickinson's EYBL alma mater, as I mentioned on last week.
All the alums were going to Hunter Dickinson, no Victor Oladipo,
Well, no, listen, Dickinson was in the hotel. I was staying in the same hotel as TakeOver. I didn't realize I was providing that.
Hunter probably thinks he is the most famous alum to come out of TakeOver, so he'd probably appreciate that reference. Yeah.
Okay, couple guys from, and then I want Adam's just kind of takeaways and any guys or whatever. But I have 5 guys that I saw play or 6 guys I saw play that I like. Jason Richardson. Richardson's on Paul George Elite. He's a 6'2" combo guard in 2024, based out of Vegas. 50th in the class, being recruited by Bama, Arkansas, Cincinnati, Michigan State, his Stanford, Virginia, San Diego State. He's kind of all across the board there. He was tremendous. Just like immediately, he was the first guy. Once I started watching, I was like, I got to talk about him on the pod in some
especially at the beginning of the week. Because that's a really loaded team. Had really high expectations. Jamari Phillips is the higher ranked of the two in the backcourt right now. Jamari went down with an injury, although and it kind of hurt their stock. But I will say that Richardson was the more efficient player through the week, and I think he definitely moved the needle and will be a player who rises. As you said, he's the son of Jason Richardson, another guy who hasn't grown into his body yet, so he's still got all that upside, but high level athlete, really long, plays both ends of the floor, and the jumper looks like it's starting to hold up, and that was that's relevant.
2025 prospect who just played well in his title game, but even before that, Dante Allen for the Knight Riders, Cayden Boozer's teammate, 6'3" shooting guard from Miami. He's ranked 80th in 2025 right now. It just seemed like he popped his value. Saturday and Sunday seems like a multi-year college player, but I saw him multiple times, and I liked him every time I saw him. Ahmad Noel from Team Final. He's 35th in the class of 2024, 6-foot athletic, strong, long battery combo guard from Philly. Very fun player to watch. Is committing on July 23rd. He will be attending either Kentucky, Georgia Tech, Tennessee, or UConn. We will see. Do you have a prediction, Adam Finkelstein?
Not that I'm at liberty to discuss. Okay. We're trying to get him to announce with us.
That would be wonderful. It might even be an HQ or a 247 announcement. That's awesome. And then 3 more. Royce Parham on Team Durant from Pittsburgh, committed to play for Marquette, 6'8" guy with a good knack. Wasn't like, over the moon, but occasionally I'll just see a guy that I don't even know exists before I go to a Peach Jam. And for one reason or other, sticks out. I thought Royce was one of those dudes. Demarion Dennis for Drive Nation, 6-footer from San Antonio. I guess he's a mid-major recruit, but I don't know. I like watching him play. He was a lot of fun. And then I think my favorite under the radar dude is this player named Ashton Simmons, who plays for JL3.
He had a great game.
Out of Houston. He's a 6'2" point guard from Beaumont, Texas. He entered the Peach Jam with offers from, I talked to him after, I think it was Sam Houston, Lamar, North Texas, and then Texas A&M. Texas has so much talent in so many schools. He has since gotten out, and then he got offers from NCA&T, TCU, and I think Louisiana Tech. This dude was I don't know. I don't understand why he doesn't have more high major offers, but what the hell do I know? He was a lot of fun and has a wonderful knack for making the right plays there. So Ashton Simmons stood out to me. Those are my guys. What were your big takeaways from Peach Jam?
I think every year to me, a friend of mine went for the first time this year, and he was kind of like wide-eyed. And if you've never been to the Peach Jam, it really is unlike any other grassroots basketball event, just because of, 1, the hospitality, and 2, the way the local community supports it. So lots of the times you go to like a grassroots game during the course of the year, it's like 10 games going on at once, and it's just like, another AAU tournament. But at the Peach Jam, every court's in their own section. Every court's got a big crowd, and it's just it's an environment like no other. And I think that to me is, and some people rise to the challenge of that environment, and some people struggle to maintain. So my takeaway is always like, unless you've been there, it's hard to relay the atmosphere, because it's closer to a college type atmosphere than you could probably appreciate. And there are guys that that certainly helped themselves and made a name for themselves, and that happens every year. Howard Pulley had a shooter who I loved, who I can't, we had him in the 80s, and I said, how is this kid? I'm looking up his name right here, but that's, so I slide off to make sure. But like one of the best, Jackson McAndrew, one of the best shooters in the country, somebody that like Duke was starting to evaluate, but he's got, Creighton, Notre Dame, Xavier, places like that already dying for him. 6'9" knockdown shooter. I mean, maybe the best shooter in the country.
Wow.
Somebody who made a name for himself in my eyes.
Okay. You also went up to Hoop Group, which is based in Philadelphia. Any players or takeaways from your stopover in the city of brotherly love?
That one was just like, that one is more like, let me make sure I'm not missing anybody in my backyard. That's an independent circuit. We had all the shoe circuits covered. They had a nationally ranked prospect up there this year, so I really wanted to get eyes on him. And ironically, he committed to Overtime Elite the next day. And that is, let me make sure, get his name right. But going to Darian Sutton from the Young and the Restless, that's the name. I wanted to make sure I got the AAU program correct. But like long lefty wing who can like really handle and pass. So I think at OTE this year, he's going to be a name that starts to emerge, but clearly lived up to the top 100 billing. But that's the job, really. Like, you can't just go to Nike, Under Armour, and Adidas. I mean, they're going to be players everywhere, and you got to try and find them.
Well, on that, we'll wrap on this. Big picture, where do each of these, and I know these circuits are, sometimes they're it's depending on the talent in a given class, but Nike's obviously the best. But you've got Nike, you've got Adidas, which seems to be better than it was in recent years. Apparently, Under Armour has like a really poor 2024 class, and now there's there's a New Balance circuit. It's got Asa Newell, who's a top 20 player in the class of 24. How would you assess where those circuits are these days? Like, is Nike just overwhelming the other three, or is it maybe a bit more competitive?
Now in 18 years of doing this, I've always avoided ranking the circuits, so this is incredible.
Okay, I'm not. Well, Nike is obviously the best one, so we can. I will say it if you won't, because it seems overwhelmingly obvious. So whatever.
I'll say, yeah, I'm going to duck the question, admittedly. So let me own that right off the bat. But I'll say this: like, it's imperative to recognize to see these kids in different contexts, because like for example, you watch Takeover and you say like, oh, Darren Harris is their best guy. Like, yeah, on Sunday he was. Patrick Ngombo's their most widely recruited guy, and Donnie Freeman is their highest ranked guy, in large part because of what he did during the high school season. So the circuits and the quality and the hospitality and the professionalism of them, I think collectively we are in a better place with grassroots basketball from an evaluator's perspective than we've ever been, because of synergy, because of the stats. But there's always guys who emerge from different places. So like, you may have a guy who on one circuit is the fourth best player on his team. He switches circuits and all of a sudden he's the best player on another team. That stuff happens, and you've got to be able to weigh it all. But and you've got to try and see the context and stay above the politics, because in my world, there's so much of that. But all three circuits have ample prospects for every level of basketball, including the high major level. I think Under Armour, what I will say about that is that their 2024 class, like Sir Muhammad is a guy, Nazir Muhammad's son, who has really benefited by playing on that platform, because he was a nationally ranked prospect, perceived as a big wing. He came in and played with Team Curry, Steph Curry's grassroots program, and was utilized as a point guard this year and kind of showed that he could do it. And now his recruitment is taking off as a result. So for me, which circuit is better on which year is never like, it's not that it's not relevant, but it's just like, for me, I've got to know everybody on every circuit anyway. Right. So I do think I will say this. What I liked about what Adidas and Under Armour did this year is they trimmed some of the fat off their league. They have less teams. Okay. And that to me has made it a better evaluation setting. And there is not I began in April, I went to Adidas and Under Armour. They didn't operate in May, so I went to the 2 EYBL sessions. Last week, I had to call games for NBA TV. Otherwise, I would have tried to hit up all 3 stops. This weekend, I'm going to Las Vegas, and I'm going to watch exclusively Adidas and Under Armour teams because I didn't get to go to those circuits last week. So you can't do your job, or at least I can't. No one in my industry can do their job unless you know every team on all 3 of those circuits, front and back, and then you're doing your due diligence on anybody else slipping through the cracks.
And we'll see if New Balance can actually, I don't know. It's new to it, but I knew a few coaches that were going out there, and
I don't even know if that's New Balance. Like, I think they're just like
people. I had 3 coaches tell me it was New Balance, so I don't even know. It was the one in Houston.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know it's Pro 16. I know whether the league is sponsored by New Balance or just some of the teams are. I admittedly do not know.
Okay, well that's listen, folks. Mid-July, just a huge. I mean, what if Parrish was on the show? What were we getting into? I don't even want to think about that. Parrish is on vacation. He will be back next week.
I sleep in August. I'll just say that. Shout out to Rothstein on that.
Yeah. We will bring our summer school session stuff next week. Nada, do we know who's going to be the first couple of ones? Do we know that yet? Have we decided if it's alphabetical or if it's in order?
It is alphabetical. Also, one other thing.
Yes.
Because you've mentioned summer shoot around, the eBay post for you to bid for your school that didn't make the list.
Yes.
And the full list will be out probably within the next 24 hours of this recording. But the full list will be out. But if your school doesn't make it, don't complain to us. Bid on it. Help out the kids for St. Jude's.
There we go. That's what we're doing. Raise charity for St. We're going to do 20 summer shoot around episodes. We're going to aim for 20 minutes. If it goes over, blame GP. And then the 21st school will be the fan base that raises the most money for St. Jude. You will see the list that will be publicized soon. Those episodes will start next week. If anything else happens this week, I'll hop on, give you another episode. But I've got my DMB show. I'm going Dave Matthews Band Saratoga this weekend. So I'm come like Thursday.
You're not coming to Vegas?
I am not coming to Vegas, but I will say if Vegas is now creeping back.
Oh, Vegas is back. 100%.
It's back for 2 days. I need at least 3 days.
No. College coaches are there for 2 days, but it starts on Friday. NBA, so it's at the tail end of NBA Summer League. NBA scouts go in the gym on Friday, and some of the events continue on through Tuesday. So college coaches are only there for 2 days, but the kids are playing for 5.
Then
and you'll be in Saratoga.
I think 2020. Actually, when we were down at Peach Jam after an unnamed head coach confronted an unnamed member of the media, we were talking about how we were reminiscing over the Vegas days and how we needed to go back. So maybe 2024. You know,
to use a baseball reference, that's a swing and a miss.
Okay, fair enough. Adam Finkelstein is the director of scouting for all of 247 Sports. You can see him frequently on CBS Sports HQ platforms. He's got his own college basketball recruiting podcast over at 247 Sports, wherever you download your podcast. Adam, thank you for joining me on this episode. I appreciate you so much. We'll talk to you again soon. For everyone watching, appreciate you. Subscribe, hit the like button. I don't do the shouts like GP, so instead, awkward pause to end the show. Sound good? Awkward pause?